My wife framed me for cheating so she could take the house I bought alone, so I proved everything legally and left her with nothing. I'm a 31-year-old guy, and for the past 5 years, I thought marriage simply meant loyalty, commitment, and hard work. I grew up in a house where every argument was a storm and every moment of peace felt temporary. So when I finally got stable, the first thing I did was save. Years of grinding, budgeting, eating cheap meals, and working double shifts just to buy a house that felt like safety. That house was my proof that I'd broken the cycle, that I'd built something no one could take from me. And when I married Hannah, I genuinely believed I was giving her the best start we could possibly have. The dynamic of our marriage settled quickly. I worked full-time, often coming home exhausted and smelling like the inside of a machine shop, while Hannah floated between passion projects. One month it was photography, then pottery, then painting, then yoga training. She always said, "I just need time to find what sparks me." And I kept telling myself that supporting her was part of being a good husband. She didn't contribute financially, but I ignored the imbalance because I thought that's what love was, picking up slack without keeping score. But the early red flags started creeping in quietly. The first time I asked her about why our grocery bill had doubled, she snapped. "Why are you acting so controlling? It's food." When I asked why she ordered 3 new rugs when we already had 2, she rolled her eyes and said, "You made this house feel like a bachelor cave. I'm fixing it." Every time I tried to bring up expenses, she made me feel guilty, like I was policing her instead of trying to manage our life. I told myself not to overthink it. I grew up in chaos, so the last thing I wanted was conflict. If ignoring small things kept the peace, then fine, I'd ignore them. But then her phone behavior changed. She kept it face down. She took it to the bathroom. She turned off notifications. And whenever I glanced over, she'd tilt the screen away, laughing it off with, "It's just work stuff, relax." I tried to believe her. I really did. But something in my gut tightened, just enough to feel it. I wish I could say things got better after that, but they didn't. The distance between us didn't explode overnight. It stretched slowly, like a rope pulled tighter each day until it hummed under the tension. It started with comments Hannah slipped into conversations, little jabs disguised as jokes. One night, while we were eating dinner, she looked around the living room I'd furnished long before we married and said, "It must be nice living in your house. I guess I just rent space in your little kingdom." She said it with a laugh, but something sharp hit underneath. At first, I brushed it off. I told her, "Hannah, it's our home. Everything in here is yours too." She shrugged and muttered, "Funny how my name isn't anywhere." I froze for a second, unsure if she meant it seriously. When I asked if she wanted to talk about it, she got defensive immediately. "Why are you acting weird? I'm just saying every real marriage shares everything." That's when she first brought up the deed. It wasn't even a conversation. It was an ambush. She stood in the hallway one morning, arms crossed, saying, "We should get your house paperwork updated. Add my name to it. It's overdue." I told her calmly that I worked years for that house, and that legally adding someone to the deed is serious. She scoffed like I'd insulted her. "Wow, so you love the house more than me. Good to know." After that, everything became a test I didn't know I was taking. If I said no to something expensive, she called me cheap. If I mentioned savings, she said, "Why do you care? It's not like I have access to anything anyway." She began staying out later, claiming she was with friends who needed support. When I asked who, she'd roll her eyes. "Why does it matter? You don't trust me suddenly?" The worst part wasn't the anger, it was the coldness. The way she walked past me like I was furniture. The way she locked her phone screen the second I walked into a room. I kept telling myself marriage had seasons. Maybe this was just a rough one. But one night, she came home smelling like perfume that wasn't hers, and my stomach dropped in a way I couldn't ignore anymore. I kept replaying that night in my head. The unfamiliar perfume, the way she avoided my eyes, the half-smile she gave when she said, "Don't start." I told myself I wouldn't accuse her without proof. I grew up in a house where accusations were thrown like knives, and I promised myself I'd never become that kind of man. So I swallowed it, buried it, tried to breathe through the unease clawing at my ribs. A few days later, something strange happened. I got a text from an unknown number. "Hey handsome, missed you yesterday." I stared at it, confused as hell. My first thought was spam. My second thought was please don't let Hannah see this. So I blocked the number immediately and deleted the message. I didn't think twice about it. Except Hannah walked into the room at that exact moment. "What was that?" she asked, her voice already sharp. I held up the phone. "Spam message." "Look, I blocked it." But she snatched the phone out of my hand before I could even finish the sentence. Her eyes widened, not with shock, but with something calculated, as she zoomed into the one line left on my screen. "Oh my God," she whispered. "You're cheating on me." I felt like someone punched the air out of my lungs. "Hannah, what?" "No, it was a random number. I literally just—" "Don't lie to me," she snapped, her voice cracking just enough to sound convincing. "I always knew a guy like you would get bored of me the second someone else gave attention." She lifted her phone and took a picture of my screen before I could even show her the full message thread. "Hannah, you're not even letting me explain," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She stepped back like I was the enemy. "I don't need explanations. I'm not stupid." I felt my heart beating in my ears, that sickening realization creeping in. She didn't want the truth. She wanted the picture. She wanted the evidence. And as she stormed out of the room, clutching her phone like a weapon, a cold thought settled in my chest. This wasn't an accusation. It was the beginning of something she'd been planning. After that day, something shifted in our home. It was like Hannah had flipped a switch inside herself and decided I wasn't a husband anymore. I was a suspect. Everything I did seemed to be watched, measured, interpreted through the worst possible lens. I'd get home from work and she'd be sitting at the dining table, arms crossed, asking, "So where were you really?" The emphasis on really felt like a knife sliding under my ribs. One night, I walked through the door and barely had time to take off my boots before she shoved her phone in my face. It was a picture of me standing outside the office, talking to a female coworker about a broken printer. "Who's this?" she demanded. "Why are you smiling at her like that?" I stared at the picture, stunned. "Hannah, that's Megan. We were literally talking about toner." She scoffed. "Sure, printer talk." At 6:15 p.m. Totally innocent. The sarcasm in her voice was thick enough to choke on. I started noticing her watching me from doorways, following me with her eyes like she was waiting for me to slip up. If I laughed at something on my phone, she'd snap, "Who are you texting?" If I came home 5 minutes late because of traffic, she'd accuse me of squeezing in time for someone else. Every conversation became a landmine. Then things got even stranger. One morning, I got into my car for work and saw something stuck under the back seat. A small black device with a blinking light. At first, I didn't understand. I picked it up, turned it over in my hands, and felt my stomach drop as the realization hit me. A tracker. Someone had put a tracker in my car. I went back inside, heart pounding, and held it up. "Hannah, did you put this in my car?" Her reaction wasn't shock. It wasn't confusion. It was rage. She snatched it from my hand and shouted, "Why are you snooping through your own car like you're hiding something?" "Hannah, that doesn't even make sense." "Stop deflecting," she screamed. And that's when it hit me. She wanted me paranoid. She wanted me cornered. She wanted me defensive. Because whatever she was building, she wasn't done yet. I thought the tracking device was the peak of insanity. I thought maybe she'd eventually get tired of playing detective and let things go. But I was wrong, so unbelievably wrong. Because the day everything snapped in half, I came home to a scene so theatrical it felt rehearsed. Hannah was sitting on the living room floor, knees pulled to her chest, crying like her entire world had collapsed. Surrounding her were printed screenshots, dozens of them, scattered across the carpet like shattered glass. Explicit messages, photos, conversations that looked like they came straight from my number. "Why?" she sobbed when she heard me walk in. "How could you do this to me? To us?" For a second, I couldn't even breathe. I crouched down, picked up one of the screenshots, and felt my own face staring back at me in a message thread I had never seen in my life. "Hannah, these aren't real. I didn't send any of this." She let out a hollow laugh. "Oh, so someone else used your number? Someone hacked your phone? Please, try a new lie." "Hannah, listen to me," I said, my voice shaking. "None of this happened. These are fake." She stood up abruptly, eyes blazing. "I'm done. I'm filing for divorce. And I'm taking the house. I'm not living in a place built on lies." I felt something inside me collapse. That house. I bought it years before we were even together. "That doesn't matter," she snapped. "You cheated. I have proof. You'll look disgusting in court. They'll side with me." She said it with the kind of confidence that didn't come from fear. It came from planning. That's when I realized something horrifying. She wasn't reacting to something she discovered. She was presenting something she created. I tried to calm her, to reason with her, but she refused to let me speak. "Get out," she whispered. "I don't feel safe around you. I don't know what you're capable of." "Safe from me?" She shoved my jacket into my hands, pushed me toward the door, and locked it behind me. And as I stood outside, staring at the house I built with my own sweat and sacrifice, one sickening truth sank in. This wasn't emotional chaos. This was a setup, a trap, and she'd been building it piece by piece, waiting for the moment to snap it shut. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't even sit. I just walked, around the block, through empty streets, past houses with warm lights glowing through curtains, homes that still felt safe. I ended up calling a coworker, Sam, who let me crash on his couch. I remember staring at his ceiling in the dark, wondering how my life had flipped upside down in a single evening. One minute, I was a husband trying to fix a distant marriage. The next, I was homeless, accused, and stripped of the one thing I worked my entire life to build. The fallout came fast. By the next morning, my phone was exploding, texts from Hannah's family, her friends, some numbers I didn't even recognize. "How could you do this? You disgust me." She deserved better. "You're lucky she's not pressing charges." Charges for fake screenshots. I tried calling Hannah to talk, to get her to at least listen, but she blocked me everywhere. Her mother picked up once just to spit. "You cheated on a woman who loved you. You deserve to lose everything." Before hanging up. At work, things weren't much better. My boss pulled me aside, clearing his throat awkwardly. "We heard some things. About personal issues. Just keep it together, okay? Big clients don't like instability." The promotion I'd spent 2 years working towards suddenly slipped out of reach, and I didn't even have the energy to fight for it. Meanwhile, Hannah filed for divorce within 48 hours. I got served papers at Sam's apartment. She was claiming emotional trauma, spousal support, and partial ownership of my house. My house, the one she never paid a single cent for. When I read the line accusing me of sustained infidelity with multiple partners, something inside me cracked. Hannah hadn't just lied. She'd demolished my name, my life, my reputation, and she was still setting more fires behind me. That night, I sat alone on Sam's balcony while he slept, staring at the city lights and feeling like the world had pulled out from under me. Every part of my life, work, marriage, reputation, home, was gone or hanging by a thread. And when my phone buzzed with a final message, a screenshot of Hannah posting online, "Cheaters always get what's coming," I realized rock bottom wasn't a place. It was a moment, and I was standing right in it, with nothing left to lose. I didn't know it yet, but the first crack in Hannah's entire plan was about to show itself, and it came from the one person I never expected to be involved, Sam. A few days after everything imploded, I was sitting in his living room, staring blankly at my phone, when he walked in holding 2 mugs of coffee. He set one in front of me and said, "Man, those screenshots she posted don't look right." I barely responded. I was too numb, too tired, too hollow to care. But he sat down anyway and said something that made my chest tighten. "The formatting's off. I work in IT. Let me check something." I didn't have the energy to believe him, but I handed over my phone like it weighed 1,000 pounds. He pulled up the screenshots Hannah had posted online, threads supposedly between me and some mystery woman, and zoomed in. "Look," he murmured, pointing at the top of the image. "See the timestamp spacing? That's not iMessage spacing. It's stitched, cropped." A jolt shot through me. "What are you saying? That these aren't real?" he said, eyes narrowing. "Whoever made these didn't understand metadata." He asked for permission to dig deeper. I nodded, my hands shaking. He hooked my phone up to his laptop and cross-referenced the times in the screenshots with my actual phone logs. "Here," he said, "according to your device, your phone wasn't even in use at half these times. It was idle." My pulse hammered in my ears. He kept digging. Then he froze. "Dude, the number texting you. The one that sent the flirt message? The one she caught you deleting?" He turned the screen toward me. "It was created 2 weeks before she accused you the first time, through an anonymous VoIP service." I felt the room tilt. Then he clicked another window open. "And this is the IP used to access that VoIP account." A familiar string of numbers appeared. My heart stopped. "Sam, that's our home IP." "Your home," he corrected softly. "Not yours." I stared at the screen, realizing the truth was no longer a suspicion. It was concrete. It was traceable. It was digital. Hannah hadn't just lied. She engineered an entire fake affair. And as the weight of that hit me, Sam glanced up and whispered, "Man, you need a lawyer." Now, for the first time since this nightmare began, a spark of something flickered inside me. Not hope, but anger. The next morning, I woke up with a kind of clarity I hadn't felt in weeks. A sharp, cold steadiness sitting right under my ribs. Sam gave me the number of a lawyer he trusted, a quiet, older guy named Patel who specialized in digital fraud and family cases. Walking into his office felt surreal, like I was stepping into someone else's life. He listened without interrupting, his fingers steepled, his expression unreadable. When I finished explaining everything, Hannah's accusations, the fake screenshots, the burner number, he leaned back and said, "You're not dealing with impulsivity. You're dealing with premeditation." That word made my skin crawl. He asked for every piece of evidence I had, photos, messages, timestamps, and handed the data over to his forensic tech. "Do not contact your wife," he warned. "Do not confront her. Let her feel comfortable." People who fabricate stories always make the mistake of thinking their lies are airtight. Over the next 3 days, the forensics report came together piece by devastating piece. First, the burner number was created using a VoIP app on a device that logged into Hannah's email during setup. Second, the explicit photos sent from my number had been taken from my Facebook years earlier, but edited with basic software she had installed on her laptop. Third, multiple fake message threads were created on a desktop that pinged the IP address of our home's Wi-Fi. At times I was verifiably at work. Fourth, the day she caught me deleting messages, the VoIP account's activity spiked from the same IP between 20 minutes before and 10 minutes after the incident. Every discovery punched a new hole in the version of her I thought I married. Then Patel played an audio file the forensics tech had recovered. Hannah talking to a friend on a voice memo she deleted but was backed up to her cloud. Her voice was unmistakable. "He'll never see it coming. Once the cheating stuff sticks, the house is mine." I felt my hands shaking. My house. My life. My reputation. She'd gone after everything. Patel closed the folder slowly. "We have enough to not only dismantle her claims, but to counterfile for fraud, defamation, and malicious intent." For the first time since this nightmare began, I exhaled. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. And Hannah had no idea the ground under her feet was about to collapse. I'll never forget the morning everything came crashing down. Except this time, it wasn't my life collapsing. It was hers. Patel called me early, his voice calm but firm. "Today's the day." The judge approved the search request. I didn't even know what to feel. Relief? Fear? Exhaustion? All I knew was that after weeks of drowning, the water finally felt shallow enough to stand. We drove to the house together. Me, Patel, a digital forensics officer, and 2 deputies. Standing on my own porch again made my chest twist. It didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a crime scene dressed in familiar paint. Hannah opened the door, confused at first, until she saw the uniforms behind me. Then her face drained of color. "What is this?" she whispered, voice trembling in that performative way she used whenever she wanted sympathy. Patel stepped forward. "Court-authorized search of all electronic devices on the property. Step aside, please." Hannah's panic wasn't the panic of an innocent woman. It was the panic of someone who suddenly realized their lies weren't airtight. She blocked the hallway. "You can't just walk into my home." I spoke before I could stop myself. "It's not your home, Hannah." Her eyes snapped to mine, filled with a hatred I'd never seen before. "You're trying to ruin me," she hissed. "You're obsessed. You're—" A deputy cut her off. "Ma'am, step aside or you will be removed." She finally backed up, shaking, muttering under her breath. The search didn't take long. Her laptop? Loaded with message editing software and drafts of fake conversations. Her tablet? Logged into the VoIP account used to send the affair messages. A drawer in her office? 3 burner phones. One with the same number that had messaged me on the day she staged her breakdown. Her cloud backups? More deleted voice memos where she bragged about how easy it would be to paint him as a cheating liar. She collapsed onto the couch, hands over her face. "Please," she sobbed. "Don't do this. I needed security. I needed to know the house would be mine if you ever left." I looked at her, truly looked, and realized I didn't recognize this woman anymore. The forensics officer turned to Patel. "We've got everything. And in that moment, watching Hannah crumble under the weight of her own lies, I understood something chilling. She hadn't underestimated me. She had underestimated the truth. And the truth was about to hit her harder than anything I ever could. Walking into that courtroom felt like stepping onto a stage where everyone already thought they knew the script. Hannah sat at the plaintiff's table wearing a soft beige sweater, hair curled, makeup natural, performing innocence like it was her profession. She wouldn't look at me, but she made sure the judge saw every shaky inhale, every trembling hand. Her attorney, a sharp-tongued woman named Klein, leaned over and whispered something that made Hannah nod dramatically, like she was steadying herself before delivering a heroic testimony. Meanwhile, I sat beside Patel, who radiated calm like a seasoned surgeon about to make the first incision. The hearing started with Klein launching straight into character assassination. Your Honor, my client has endured months of emotional abandonment, infidelity, and psychological harm. We have extensive evidence of the husband's affairs, as well as proof that she contributed significantly to the home he now refuses to share. Every sentence was a lie, but Hannah nodded through all of it, letting tears slide down her cheeks at exactly the right moments. When it was their turn to present evidence, Klein dramatically held up the printed screenshots, those same fabricated messages. These were taken directly from his phone, she declared. They clearly show infidelity. The judge skimmed them, expression unreadable. When it was Patel's turn, he didn't raise his voice. He didn't posture. He simply stood, adjusted his glasses, and said, Your Honor, we will begin by examining the authenticity of those screenshots. What followed was the quietest demolition I've ever seen. The forensic officer detailed every discrepancy, metadata that didn't match, timestamps that were impossible, editing artifacts in the margins, evidence of a VoIP account created from Hannah's tablet, software installed on her laptop used to fabricate messages. Klein tried to object, but the judge silenced her. Counsel, unless you can refute the forensic chain of custody findings, sit down. Then Patel played the voice memo. Hannah's voice echoed through the courtroom. He'll never see it coming. Once the cheating stuff sticks, the house is mine. There was a silence, so sharp it felt dangerous. Hannah's face went gray. Klein withdrew representation on the spot. The judge turned to her slowly. Mrs. Walker, what you attempted is not only fraudulent. It is malicious, premeditated defamation. The court will not tolerate this. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just felt something inside me finally loosen. But the judge wasn't finished. And as for the house, it belongs entirely to your husband. You have no legal claim. Hannah looked at me then, truly looked, and for the first time, she had nothing to hide behind. And somehow, she still hadn't realized the consequences weren't over yet. The moment the judge dismissed the case, Hannah's entire facade cracked like cheap plaster. She reached out as if I were supposed to steady her, like I was still the man who once tried to save our marriage with patience and blind loyalty. But I didn't move. I didn't even blink. Something inside me had gone quiet, too quiet to ever be shaken by her theatrics again. Outside the courtroom, she finally snapped. Please, she begged, grabbing my arm with trembling fingers. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I was scared. I thought you'd leave me eventually. I needed security. I pulled my arm back gently but firmly. You tried to destroy my life to feel secure, Hannah. She shook her head violently. No, you don't understand. If you just talked to me. I tried, I said. You turned everything into a fight you were planning to win. For a moment, she just stared at me, like she was seeing the real consequences for the first time. Not because she felt remorse, because she lost. 48 hours later, deputies escorted her out of the house she had once declared she'd take from me. I watched from the doorway, arms crossed, as she packed her things in tense, brittle silence. She kept glancing at me, like waiting for me to soften, to take pity, to offer one more chance. I didn't. When she reached the door, she tried one last time. We can fix this. We can go to counseling. You don't have to do this. I met her eyes calmly. Hannah, you didn't just break trust. You buried it. And you expected me to choke on the dirt. She didn't have a response. Once she was gone, the quiet in the house felt unreal, like stepping into a world that had been paused for months. No more accusations. No more staged tears. No more walking on eggshells in the home I paid for, built, and protected. The next day, Patel filed a civil suit on my behalf, damages for defamation, emotional distress, loss of work opportunities, and malicious intent. Hannah's attorney emailed a single line. My client is unable to contest the claims. Her family, who had once flooded my messages with insults, went silent. Completely silent. No apologies, no explanations, just a void where their outrage used to be. I walked through each room of my house, touching the walls, the windowsills, the furniture I had chosen long before her. For the first time in months, it actually felt like mine again. But somehow, I knew the final chapter of this wasn't healing. It was transformation, and it was just beginning. When Hannah left, the house felt hollow, but not in a painful way. More like a space finally cleared after years of being choked by clutter. For days, I walked around in silence, letting my mind catch up with everything that had happened. I expected grief. I expected regret. Instead, what I felt was something I hadn't known in months: stability. The absence of chaos felt like oxygen. I took time off work, not because I was falling apart, but because I was rebuilding. I repainted walls she insisted were too boring. I removed the decor she bought during spending sprees and replaced it with things that actually felt like me. Every brushstroke, every small change was a reminder. This house was something I earned, something I fought for, something no one would ever weaponize again. When I finally returned to the office, my boss called me in. He cleared his throat the same way he had when he pulled my promotion. We, heard the full story, he said. You handled yourself better than most would. He reinstated the promotion retroactively. Hearing that felt like another piece of my life snapping back into place. One evening, while organizing some old files, I found a photo from my early 20s, me standing in front of a rundown rental, holding a set of keys with the widest, proudest smile. I remembered that version of myself, the one who survived chaos and vowed to build something better. I realized I hadn't lost him. Hannah just buried him under fear and manipulation for a while. As for her, word eventually reached me through a mutual acquaintance. She'd left the city. No stable place to stay. No job. She'd burned every bridge. Family, friends, everything. Because the truth of what she'd done was too much for anyone to defend. Some people thought that would make me feel vindicated. But the truth, I didn't feel triumph, that I didn't feel pity, that I didn't feel anything. She didn't deserve a place in my emotions anymore. What I did feel was peace. A heavy, warm, grounding peace I hadn't known I'd been starving for. I sat on my renovated couch, in my reclaimed living room, and let that feeling settle in my chest like an answer I'd been searching for. I didn't seek revenge. I sought the truth. And in the end, the truth did all the work for me, quietly, cleanly, completely.